There's one of these cars that we put on our leases, EV6, the Kia.
Yeah.
Right, and we put it right next to a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, and it out on the straight line. I don't know, over 400 meters, it just beats a sports car, right? So it's amazing, right? You have a car that's 1/10 the price of a traditional sports car, driving at the same speed.
CY has a lead foot, viewers. Welcome back to CEO2CEO. Today I'm with CY, Group CEO of Yinson Holdings, and we're going to talk about some exciting ideas around energy transition, transitioning companies, and demystifying ESG. Because as an acronym, it can look challenging, but we just break it down into actionable items. Good morning, CY.
Morning.
It is morning, dear viewers, where we're taping this. Now, let's do some icebreaker questions. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Pickle or paddle?
Paddle.
You sure?
Paddle.
What's the one place you've always wanted to visit?
Probably space, somewhere that not many people have visited before.
Now, very difficult question. How would you describe your job to a 5-year-old?
Wow, probably problem solving, solution seeking.
What would you do on a rainy day?
Well, nowadays I just want to chill at home, watch a video. That's probably it.
Favorite time of day?
Probably at night, where I have my own free time.
Best advice you have received?
I think my father, he always tells me, just try and you just learn from process, not just studying from the side, right? So that's probably a very good advice.
So we learn from doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually what it's really about. And so let's take that theme, learning from doing, and applying it to ESG. So what is the philosophy behind Yinson's pursuit of sustainability excellence?
I think sustainability, if you think about it, it is a very broad word, and it all revolves around thinking long term, thinking beyond 1 year, thinking beyond 2 years, not taking short-term decisions. Is exactly what we tell our people, right? A lot of people talk about ESG being sustainability, but sustainability is a much broader word, and I always believe that we need to build the business for many years to come. Which is part of our core value. Sustainability beyond just ESG is making decisions so that the company can last many decades, making the right decisions now, making the decisions from a reputation standpoint, things that are not just financially good today, but also financially good in the future. And I think we'll continue to improve and making sure that our business will be around many, many years to come.
So that is the ethos, or if you like, the building blocks of Yinson 30 by 30 that we've got today that we need to manage, but we have to have one eye or more than one eye on the future to make sure that we have something for future generations as well.
Yeah.
Now, we know from the exchange, because we track these things, of course, that even before TCFD was mandatory, Yinson took the step forward to commit to TCFD. And of course, that's a big step. I'd like to know a little bit more and share your thought process behind that step and what's next in your journey for Yinson and climate-based disclosures.
I mean, we don't do things for the sake of doing things, just trying to meet regulations. Every time you embark on something, you must find the benefits of doing it for the organization, which may translate to financial gains over a longer period of time. I think that's how we see it. And the whole idea of TCFD, when we started, actually we didn't know what it was. And we hear a lot about climate change. We hear a lot about getting rid of fossil fuels, things like that. And us primarily in the fossil fuel business, until maybe 5 years ago, we started pivoting a bit. At that point in time, we felt that let's understand what climate change is about. Let's see what climate risks there are on the business, see whether it affects us in the longer term. Interestingly, we saw that, hey, renewables was really becoming very cheap. Would it be a disruptor of fossil fuels, a 100-year-old business? It could be, right? And today, I mean, as we roll out renewable projects and all, you could see the cost per megawatt of production for renewable is much cheaper than fossil fuels today. And battery cost is coming down, reliability is improving. So it potentially is a risk for the fossil fuel business. So I think that's where we felt that there's use of TCFD. It looks on the overall climate risk to the business. And if we didn't embark on that, I guess we wouldn't see how cheap other technologies are coming up and the speed of reduction on costs. That's a very important thing, right? To see how our business will be disrupted, and that's where we started to look into renewables, into clean mobility, for example, to see how mobility costs will actually go down. And today you see EVs are even cheaper than internal combustion engines, and we're just amazed by how fast and how cheap things are coming outside of the traditional energy business. And I think that's where TCFD has allowed us to see a much broader way, and actually held that board and the risk committees as well, to address that, and to put ourselves in a position where climate change is a risk, but also an opportunity for us to thrive on a decade from now, right? I think that's how far we look into our business. So what's next after TCFD? I think TCFD is one of the risks that we look at, climate risk. Right? People are talking biodiversity risk and all. And there is real risk. Even you roll out renewable projects, you need to look at the biodiversity, our FPSO business, look about the marine life and all. And these are things that we already do. We've not got as much data as we hoped. But I think over time, just like our climate risk, as we get more data, we start making small steps, we get more data, we understand what we're doing better over time. I think we can move towards that direction. But I think it's not just climate risk, biodiversity. There's a lot more risk that you need to look at from an organization, and things like inclusivity in a business and all, right? That you look at, and I think these are all quite important to make the purpose of the organization suitable for the whole for the people that work in that organization.
We did a CO2CEO with Charles at Post Malaysia a little while ago, and he talked about, and he referenced the transition cost and so on, and he mentioned that he's changing his fleet from ICE to EV, and it's actually paying its way. Where the traditional thinking is ICE long-term ownership cost is actually cheaper, and so you can actually profit and do good by doing good, and I think that's a key takeaway as well. Viewers and listeners, because there will be a podcast, I do encourage you to also listen, for those of you who won't be watching. For the information of listeners, floating production, storage and offloading, FPSO, often refers to a floating vessel near an offshore oil field where oil is processed and stored until it can be transported. And thus, the business of FPSO is a cross-section of the oil and gas maritime industries. And for many in the general public, we are seeing the pivot of Yinson, but oil and gas and green, how do you navigate that conversation, CY?
I wouldn't say our FPSO business is green, right? That's definitely not a green business. It's an energy business. But I would say that when it comes to addressing emissions on the FPSO, we are by far number one in the world when it comes to addressing emissions on our FPSO. It's beyond me. It's our people themselves have passion in trying to reduce the emissions, in trying to take on projects that will continuously reduce our carbon intensity on FPSOs. So I wouldn't say we are a green business, but I would say we are a transitioning business, where every FPSO that we put on has more technology that reduces emissions as we put a new FPSO on. And I think we're quite proud of that. When we look at how an FPSO was built, when we started, there was disregard for flaring, there was disregard for many things, right? And today, our latest FPSO will focus on a technology first offshore that anyone has put on the FPSO globally. It's a carbon capture technology that we put. But before it went to carbon capture, we had combined cycle, closed flaring, carbon blanketing, different technologies on the FPSO. Our latest FPSO, our go-go for E&I, would have a carbon capture. It doesn't re-inject yet. It's not as easy to just re-inject. But in the future, that's where we're planning to get a good carbon capture solution, re-injecting it, and even helping the oil companies improve their production in the future. So I think when we talk about reducing emissions, it's not just only reducing emissions, but also reducing wastage. When we reduce wastage, our clients actually benefit from it. They don't need to burn from a combined cycle, for example. They burn less gas. They're able to export more gas for sales. So a lot of this that we don't understand, that everybody thinks going green is very expensive, but the reality is when you reduce wastage, is where you reduce emissions, is where you are able to export more product because you waste less, and it actually improves the bottom line for our clients as well. So I think that as a holistic concept, we always say we need to think of things not just doing green for the sake of doing it. We need to not just write a report for the sake of writing that report, but really how can we benefit our stakeholders, be it clients, and look from a holistic stakeholder perspective, making everybody, find that balance so that everybody benefits from this transition journey.
I think what we need to understand is we create value.
Yeah.
And we are looking to create value sustainably. But we also have to recognize that there are steps in that transition, and we need to bring everyone along on that journey as well. Yinson is now known as a global energy infrastructure company with several projects around the world. This is exciting. Would you like to share a bit more about these projects, CY?
I think where we look at ourselves, when we look at how we look at energy infrastructure from FPSOs, it's infrastructure like, I think that what we did was we started our renewables business a couple of years ago. We are now producing about 500 megawatts. We are doing development, focusing on mainly solar farms and wind farms around the world. Our development projects are now in Brazil. We started our construction in Peru. We have operating assets in India. We have development pipelines coming up from New Zealand, Italy, different parts of the world. I wouldn't say we are in the PV because we also do wind. Just like our FPSO, we work in different parts of the world. I feel that, when it comes to renewables, we select countries that we feel that there's a good risk reward.
Yep.
Because these businesses is, like I said,
Is it crowded?
It's crowded, low barrier of entry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of capital chasing it, so returns are low. So we need to pick the right spots where it's not priced to perfection. And also we do the development phase, right? And to increase our returns by that little bit more. And yeah, that's what we do for our renewables. And I think we've made some mistakes, we made some successes as well. But I do believe, it is a exponentially growing business globally. And it's just what the world needs. A lot of demand for renewable power.
There's actually a very nice segue into the next piece, which is something I'm particularly interested in: sustainability and sustainable mobility.
Yeah.
So you've got energy production, so you move up the value chain to mobility.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that a little bit and see why?
We have to reconstruct the whole energy business, right? Traditionally, it's coal, oil, and gas, right? And that's where a big part of the world uses. But I think when we start looking at where energy can move in the future, right? People always talk about renewables not being reliable, not being able to provide power at any time of the day. It's dependent on sun, dependent on wind. But as electric mobility comes to parity, even with subsidized oil, the cost of mobility is going down. I don't have any ICE vehicles anymore. It's all EVs, and my cost has gone down significantly. Maintenance cost has gone down.
Yeah.
Time cost to even go for servicing. So mobility costs will go down with EV, and it works hand in hand with renewables, right? Being able to store on the batteries, right? And your vehicle being able to charge during off peaks. And industries being able to use power during peaks, which most countries have a increase in consumption of power in the day, and then a reduction in the night, right? This works very well to balance power, right, with EV. So I think from a holistic view, it works hand in hand. EVs, renewables, to stabilize the grid, to give reliable power, to take power when it's off peak. It just matches very well. And I think we invest in production of the renewable power, We also invest into the distribution of the power to electric mobility right now. What we've done beyond just electric on supplying the electrons to the vehicles have been we've done other things such as the batteries. We invested in battery companies to make sure that we understand energy storage, which I believe any energy company of the future will need to understand energy storage. We've also invested in the vehicle itself. We are doing leasing of vehicles from two-wheeler, four-wheeler. We've designed our own electric boats. We just did our first marine operation yesterday in
good.
Singapore for our electric
Congratulations.
mobility. And provide not just the power but also the leasing, which would bring your capex lower,
Making it more accessible.
cheaper, and trying to do a holistic view, because charging, people always complain about charging infra, so we are providing mobility and the infra at the same time, so that to reduce your pain points about the transition. And post, they talk about Charles, right? Is one of our clients that has embarked on this, and we're excited to hopefully we can help a lot more corporates or a lot more people transition into a cheaper form of transport, right? I think that's the key. A lot of people are fearful about transitioning, but the reality, there's a lot of benefits to your
So you're
wallet.
removing the objection.
Yeah,
So we take away the cap, we make it easier, more accessible, and
cheaper.
of course. And that, talking about more accessible, 10,000 charging stations. I think that's the target we've set ourselves by 2025. But Yinson is the largest operator of charge point operators with 400 operational sites. Where do you see yourselves fitting into the overall? So you've got production, you've got transportation, you're now charging. As a part of the infrastructure of mobility, if you would, where does Yinson fit in? See why?
So I think we are quite well invested in Malaysia, definitely, for across the mobility chain, right? We've got, like I said, supply two-wheelers, four-wheelers, and also the power, right? I think that's the end-to-end, and even the marine side in Singapore. It's all electric mobility transportation, and why we do that, because there's a need for the ecosystem. A few years ago when we went out speaking to clients, right, and they said they would like electric mobility, they would like a electric van, but no, there's no charging infra. So we built up the infrastructure.
The focus is point to point, or say if you look at Charles, it's a natural for him, or for Post Malaysia rather, because they'll have each station, they'll do their circuit and come back. So if you like, it's hub and spoke, start off and then begin to fill in the gaps, if you would. Is that the strategy?
So we fill all the main areas first, then we fill the gaps later on from an infrastructure perspective. We also provide the financing through leasing, meaning we take on technology risk. If the vehicle was to be not that good a vehicle 5 years from now, right, it would be our problem. You could just pass us back the vehicle and use a new vehicle. No, we will worry about where you need to go. We'll put in the chargers, and not just very simple AC chargers that you put at home. I think we've been rolling out a lot of fast chargers, right? We put 100, 200 kilowatt charging in different parts of Malaysia. So it allows vehicles to go interstate and charge 15 minutes charging and things like that. So I mean, that is very costly to put up, and I think we're quite committed to that infra. So we'll be able to provide a holistic mobility service, fleet management service. Whoever wants to start a electric transportation company tomorrow can come to us and say, hey, I need 5 vans, I need charging, can I start it tomorrow? I've got the cargo, and then they can just plug and play. And we also provide fleet management solutions. So it's a really holistic way of moving into the electric transportation space really fast.
Building or the build out of charge points, difficult? Because you've got to get access, you've got to find, I imagine you need to drop a line in, you have to find a spot, then you need to get appropriate approvals. Walk the viewers through. I mean, I used to build gas pipelines, and it was an absolute headache.
Well, when I started putting a charger in my own house, I thought it's quite easy to put chargers throughout Malaysia. But then you realize there's many regulations when you do a public charger as compared to a home charger. So it does take a lot more time to put a charger out there, a public charger, especially a fast charger, in different parts of Malaysia. And we've not been rolling out as much as we hoped we had. But that's really because of, there's a lot of things. The chargers that we thought were the best 2 years ago are no longer the best chargers. Right? Technological change. We have to select our chargers right. Access of power. Not everywhere has access to quick, fast power. Right? So yesterday, for example, at KLGCC, next to the pedal club, we launched a charge hub there. Which there's not enough power, but we put an energy storage system to allow fast charging to take place in KLGCC today.
So there's batteries, and then you have the charger.
So what it allows is you take power from the grid, and then we top it up with the battery to give you a faster charge. And I think that's going to be how we're going to roll out charging in areas where there's not enough power, right? So beyond just power solution, whether there's enough power, the correct sites that people want to go to, you also have different regulations. We've got KPKT, where you've got the fire regulations that you need to work with. So you've got the Energy Commission, where they will give you a license. But these are for safety reasons. So I understand these regulations.
Old condos. Say you have an old condo, right?
Yeah.
Not a new build. New build will have appropriate infrastructure. How do you tackle the challenge? So a condo's 20 years old. It's got a small substation. Everybody wants to charge. So there's a technical solution to now overcome that problem.
I think that's where a lot of understanding of condos needs to happen. Even my condo, I struggle. I've got a charger in my condo. I don't even expect a fast charge. I expect 3.7 kilowatts, just double the speed of my iPhone charge. That's fine, right? I'm able to survive. No, I have that kind of speed of charging, very slow speed of charging for 3 to 4 EVs that my family uses. And that's enough. Because most of the time, you go back, it's 50-60%. It's just like your handphone. You wake up in the morning, it's full, right? 8 hours, 9 hours overnight charging. So you don't need very fast charging, first of all. The reality is, in condos, old condos, there is always power to charge that amount. But the assumption is, if you have 10 vehicles charging at that speed, right, there's not enough charging. But no 10 vehicles charge at the same time, at the same pace, and are empty at the same time. So people need to realize that, reality, if you're allowed to have enough power for 10, for example, 10 charges, you're actually probably allowed 40 because nobody charges at the same time, right? So what you actually do need is 40, and a software that we have internally developed, where we actually allocate power.
Can distribute.
Right, distribute based on how much, who's charging, and who needs it the most. So if a car is at 80%, it will disregard. It will slow down, but when the car is at 20%, we'll speed up, right? A bit more allocating. So that kind of load balancing factors.
Is that software, that switchgear?
It's about software. Yeah.
So is it expensive to install, CY?
It's not expensive to install. It's something that we just came up with the solution this year. We've been talking to condos now.
Condo management companies, you can now talk to CY and address your concerns.
Yeah. So you can put more chargers in your condo, and your residents will be going and hounding you every day for a charger.
No, because this was this is the anecdotal things we hear, right? Because we're all sitting there plugging into the wall. So that's very interesting.
Which is why I put one in KLGCC, because there's a few of the residents in my area that complain there's no chargers. They can't install chargers. So I said, we'll put one nearby. Everybody can go KLGC for charging.
That's good. It's good. No. All right. Let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. We in the industry do like our acronyms. Now, Yinson has been recognised for its DEI initiatives, such as earning the title of Champion of LinkedIn Talent Awards in 2022. Now, with operations spread out across multiple countries around the world, how do you approach your DEI? Because it has a cultural context, right?
I think understanding culture is one of the most difficult things. We work from countries like Malaysia, India, all the way to countries like Holland and in Norway, where people are much more direct. In Malaysia, we have much more, I would say, a much more softer approach to things. We like to put things in a nicer way and less direct, right? I think we work in so many different cultures. So I think what we try to do is we have our own set of core values, which is roads, where we talk about openness, reliability, openness, adaptability, making decisions, decisiveness, and sustainability. That's our values, right? So that's the first step that we look at how we work. It's a bit difficult, but it's something that we continue to promote through all our global offices. We try to localize everywhere we are, so we don't try to impose how we think in the country that we are. We localize as much as we can, trying to get the people to understand what is Yinson's culture and the country's culture, and finding that balance. But culture classes is quite important for DEI to be, to succeed, because it is very difficult for people to understand cross cultures throughout the globe. It's something that's an ongoing improvement process that we try every year. We get much more, we do much more surveys internally every time to understand, pulse surveys to see how things are moving, so that we can address issues early. I mean, the reality is, if you're able to embrace DEI, be inclusive, so people don't go to office thinking that, oh, I'm part of the Malaysia office, I'm part of the Ghana office, I'm part of the Angola office, I'm the Brazilian office. You're able to break that wall that we are all part of one team, a global team. I think there's so much benefits, because we are able to adapt in many countries that we work in. We are able to attract much more different race, different genders to join the workforce. If you limit yourself that I only want male, I only want from this race, I only want this religion, then you limit yourself to such a small pool that getting access to good talent becomes even more difficult. Our idea is to embrace DEI and have a much greater talent pool to recruit from, right? If let's say you want to be a working mother, let's see how we can support you. The whole idea is to open up the recruitment pool, so we can get the
Keep
best
talent
talents.
in, and people will make family decisions and look at how to retain that talent.
And you need to be inclusive. So I think that's where our HR tries to work on, trying to understand issues, seeing whether we can, improve on inclusivity and things like that. That's why I think we are able to recruit the best from a global talent pool, recruitment talent pool. Yeah.
I want to tease a little bit out, because at the start, I talk about ESG being this, people see it as large, big problem.
Yeah.
But we think it's an opportunity. What advice, CY, would you give corporate leaders that want to start to pivot the business, as you've boldly done, to be more environmentally conscious?
I speak to a lot of other corporate leaders, right? A lot of people think it's really bottom line driven. To be environmentally conscious can also go in hand with financially conscious, right? From a business perspective, you're not, like I said, you look long term, you look at climate, you look at financial sustainability and so on. So people should always at least tap the lower hanging fruits. And the lower hanging fruits are like things like solar panels in Malaysia, right? It's already the cheapest form of power. At worst, it's the same price as what you're paying. Anyone in the right set of mind should put solar panels, right? And stop having the mindset that renewables is more expensive, right? It is already cheaper. It is helping you, reduce costs as you put the solar panels on. Still there are people say, well, next year will be cheaper, year after next is cheaper, but their current bill is still more expensive. Now, these are things that allow you to make the first step, not just environmentally conscious, but also allowing you to be financially conscious. Electric mobility, especially with fossil fuel price going up in Malaysia, it's a no-brainer to change to electric mobility, right? Yeah, there's always excuses of, oh, I'm not going to change to electric mobility. There's not enough infra, right? I have not charged in a public charging station. I think I've charged twice, right? In my 3 years of driving an EV, most of the time I charge at home. And the reality is, vehicles today have 500, 600, 700 kilometer range. How often do you drive more than that, right? Why worry about the 1% of your consumption, where 99% of the time you're not driving that far, and 99% of the time you're able to save your costs. Why worry about the 1%, right? So I feel that a lot of people are finding reasons not to change. They like to stay in their comfort zone. But as you take the first step and learn, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about how the vehicle moves, how much you can save. And these are just small steps. And from these small steps, there will be more steps.
Picks up faster, doesn't it, CY?
Really fast.
See?
It's a really fast car. I mean, there's one of these cars that we put on our leases, EV6, the Kia,
Yeah.
right? And we put it right next to a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, and it out, on a straight line, over 400 meters, it just beats a sports car, right? So it's amazing, right? You have a car that's 1/10 the price of a traditional sports car, driving at the same speed, and that's why I said the efficiency of an EV is just so
Lower
high.
cost of ownership, less servicing. What's the service interval on an EV?
I mean, that's the beauty about an EV. There's not much parts to service, but
Ease of use
yeah,
and low cost ownership. See what you've successfully transformed Yinson's business focus from oil and gas and sector now into renewables. Looking ahead, next 20 to 30 years, how do you ensure that Yinson continues to innovate?
I think we talk about adaptability in our core value, sustainability, long-term thinking, adaptability as part of our core values, right? I think people is the key. That's why we talk about DEI, we talk about it's all about inclusivity. It's getting the right people, trying to train the right people to think outside of the box. And I think one of our values being decisiveness trains our people to take decisions from even their first day in Yinson. Stop asking for answers, make the decision. If you fail on the decision, learn from the decision, which is what my father always talks about, learning from trying. If we can continue to harness people to make decisions from the first day they enter the company, over a period of time, they would be very good at making decisions. They would also be very good at accepting wrong decisions, and really, being adaptable to how things will change. I think in some, things change very fast. Even when we make decisions, we say, hey, this is wrong, let's move to something else, right? And that ability to adapt is also how an organization should work. As you grow bigger, of course, it gets tougher, but as you add more processes, you also have to reduce processes. And I think if we continue on that culture, we continue making our people think more, improving the critical thinking. I think that move to adapting to the way the world works, the speed of change, right, is something that the organization can continue to keep up with, even when I'm not around.
That raises. I've often talked about we run publicly listed companies, so we have a strong sense of proprietorship in driving it, but we also recognise we're running the assets for other people.
Yeah.
Succession planning. What happens when CY is not around anymore? Heaven forbid, of course. Long time out in the future.
I think it's not about.
So you're bringing lots of people up. I mean, we have this conversation even at Bursa, managing talent and providing headroom for growth and so on.
I definitely don't do all the work myself, right? I have a very good team of people that work with me to execute strategy. I don't decide on the strategy and execute. No, I work with my management team and my board to implement strategies, and all. So I think at least, like I said, TCFD was something new. We had a conversation around it. Let's relook at our strategies, things like that. And it's not really all driven by me. It's driven by the team. We talk to people and we say, hey, this is something we should look at, right? I also believe, right, when you talk about, we talk about CY not around, it could be not around for many reasons, right? For being burned out, for many reasons beyond just. So I think that, today the company is already on a good footing where the discussions are on the right things. The strategies, the discussions are much longer term. And that's how the organization already thinks, right? Of course, I'm still very motivated to work as we speak today, but I also think about succession, right? How we're going to build our people up to make bigger decisions. If you ask some of our people, they do make very big decisions. And today, just like when we did our first sustainability board, it was something that team wanted to do. I said, let's try. It's the first. Let's try. I think these new things we always learn, and I think the organization has come to a point where our people are willing to try things, trying to understand things, and take small bites in things to understand and learn. Just like when we went on the journey of electric mobility. In fact, interestingly, we're from transportation to oil and gas, right, and back to mobility, which is in a way transportation as well, but in a bigger scale and on the infrastructure side. And when we look at things like carbon credits, we've been supporting
Thank you.
DCX on carbon credits. to understand, right? If we never bought a single carbon credit, we would never understand how these carbon credits work, how they're different, the quality of credits, and what kind of quality we should go into, and it wasn't a lot to buy on the exchange, but through buying in the exchange, you learn a lot, right? And I think that's where the people in Yinson have no fear about learning. We see buying it as a form of learning, and learning is in many ways, right? When one person in the organization learns, the whole organization learns together. I think.
I mean, we learn by doing. The old adage, see one, do one, teach one.
Yeah.
CY, thank you. You've been generous with your time.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now, just before we leave our viewers, last message for them. What's the key takeaway?
We always say, and it's been our annual reports as well, right? We always say about decision making, the best decision is always the right decision. The next best decision is the wrong decision. The worst decision is always not to take a decision, right? So I always believe that. I tell our people that. So I always say, let's just try. If we fail, we move on. Let's not just sit and wait, and in fact find more reasons of not doing something, right? And that's the worst decision. So I think that's the key takeaway. Start something, learn from it, and you always stay ahead by learning. Thanks.
So, embrace electric mobility. Make the change for a better future. Thank you today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, CY. Cheers.